there's something called it's a double disadvantage, being black and then being a woman, and if you're from like an Islamic nation, that's a triple disadvantage, really. That's how society puts it. As a young person, first and foremost, we came to Australia with no English language, which was already a big problem, because if you can't speak like the natives, or you stand out like, Wally, but Wally is quite hidden, but you stand out like something that's so open, you know what I mean?
So you were telling me about a concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two concepts that I've begun to do a bit more studies on. You said two things that I really, really want to address in the future as well is one, women of color in now anywhere in the Western world, right, automatically considered to be irrational and very emotional, right? And I really want to challenge those two things because I don't believe that's the case. I think they are byproducts of the environment, and it's a survival mechanism when, there's something called it's a double disadvantage, being black and then being a woman, and if you're from like an Islamic nation, that's a triple disadvantage, really. That's how society puts it. And I really want to challenge people to begin to see the outward black woman is someone who needs to be on alert 24/7, because the moment she puts her guard down, she puts her guard down, the whole world will begin to pick on her. And I really don't believe our women are irrational. I really, really do believe that they're just a byproduct of what society has sort of brushed them with. And an African man is not helping. The white man is not helping. The white woman is not helping. Sometimes even sisters against sisters are not helping. And I'm really, really keen in that space to see how we can better address that in conversations like these. That's one. And then the other thing is when it comes to emotion, all right, and my work, the two are two completely different realms. I do not put emotion in my work, not in the sense that I don't love or don't enjoy. No, I don't put. I think sometimes we're very irrational when we're working, and this is not a woman or man thing. No, it's just generally speaking, we're very irrational beings, and sometimes we want to nurture to a point where I think we take ownership of something, neglecting a lot of things in the process. So when you separate emotion from work, I think you tend to do better and you make more concise decisions. And I think that's very important for us to also acknowledge and understand. For example, the organization ARC, right, which is the one that I run, I am not, and I tell people that because people associate me with ARC and say, "You're ARC, you're ARC." No, I'm not. ARC is ARC, and I'm a completely different individual to ARC. All right. The two things are two different things. And I don't want to be associated with ARC at that level, because if I was to separate from ARC, it does not mean ARC comes with me, and then whatever is left behind is left behind. So whenever I do anything that I started, I always make sure that there's a blueprint of its own original, I suppose, origin in a way. So if someone wants to replicate it, they don't have to replicate me. They just replicate the actual product
The
itself.
framework.
You see,
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
framework. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we lose track when we create or when we initiate or when we get into positions of title. All these things actually are things that I think about a lot, and I really want to address them properly. And recently, as I started to work with a few organizations that are sort of tackling those kind of issues, and I really want to get into that space more and more. I've kind of avoided it in the past because too busy, yeah, too busy for my own good. But slowly coming back to it, and we'll see how we go.
I like what you said about the emotion and everything in it. And I can, as I was sharing with you earlier, that when I was in corporate Australia, I run my own business now. And when I was in corporate Australia, it was really tough. It
Mm,
was really tough to always be on, on my toes. I had to be very careful about what I said, how I said, the emotion I brought in.
mm,
I didn't feel I had the luxury to fail.
right.
I didn't feel like the luxury to learn. I always
Mm,
had to be on top of my game and know everything. And the moment I made a mistake, that will be talked about for weeks, So yeah, that's interesting. Interesting.
yeah, beautiful.
Our guest today is Jonasi Engano Singehebuye. Engano is a dedicated advocate for the well-being of women, and children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Informed by personal experiences and accounts shared within these communities, Nkano has recognized the heightened vulnerability of these groups to exclusion from various opportunities within and around the Victorian communities. Motivated by a passion to level the playing field and provide equitable access to opportunities for all community members, Nkano took initiative as a teenager by founding a community group called Acts of Random Kindness, or commonly known as ARC. This group's mission to empower, inspire, and connect and educate individuals from diverse backgrounds, emphasizing the significance of peace living, equality, and comprehensive community growth. Since inception in 2012, Janasi has actively worked with and mentored over 200 young women and 400 young children in the western suburbs of Melbourne. The community group, initially named Acts of Random Kindness, evolved into a non-profit organization, Acts of Random Kindness Victoria, incorporated in 2019. Welcome to the show, Janasi.
Lovely to have you. It's lovely to have you for you guys to have me today. And I look forward to it.
Oh, that's really good. We started by just talking a little bit about, the passion that you have with the work that you're doing and what drives you to that. I would like us to take a back step a little bit. And, you arrived in Australia in 2005 from Tanzania. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey from Burundi to Tanzania and eventually Australia? I mean, you were born in Tanzania, but your parents were from Burundi. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, first of all, it's amazing to be here this morning. It's such an honor to be, in this wonderful initiative by you girls. And I think it's something that's much needed. In terms of background wise, yes, born in Tanzania, originally from Burundi. The majority of my family have actually basically born outside of Burundi. Only mom and dad really have any experience with the nation. So back in the late 1980s, there was a bit of a civil unrest in Burundi, which saw my parents escape to neighboring Congo, which where they stayed for a while. And to their grace, they gave birth to two daughters whilst in Congo. But it didn't take long until Congo also became, it underwent also a civil war. And again, my mom and dad also found themselves on the back end of, fleeing again. So basically, my mom and dad, realistically, to today, so they're probably about 3, 4 time refugees in different lands, which is not obviously an easy experience. In terms of myself, as soon as they arrived from Congo to Tanzania, my mother was already pregnant with me at that time. So the moment they arrived in Tanzania in the early 1990s, I was born. And that's basically been the story. In Tanzania, very, very blessed because we live somewhat peacefully, because Tanzania is one of those nations in Africa that's never really experienced war. But because you're coming from a refugee background, settling into any nation is never easy. And we know that in Australia, we have our own problems with asylum seekers and others as well, who come in and find life extremely difficult to assimilate in, especially when the opportunities are quite rare in a way, especially early on in the land. Tanzania was no different, but my mother and father were quite active in their pursuit for better living, and they never really rested from that, because in Tanzania, mother gave birth to a few more children as well. So in total, by the time we came to Australia, mom had seven of us, which is a marvel in itself for someone living in the condition that she was living at that time. And greater than that, none of us actually passed away, which is quite rare as well, especially living in the conditions we were living back home. In saying that, though, we, like I said, very hardworking parents, and credit to them, really. I could never be ever more proud of my parents in what they've been able to achieve, in the love that they've been able to show us. But, fighting every single day to ensure that we get the best out of life. My father decided to apply for the humanitarian, visa to come to Australia. And through that, we were able to come to Australia in the early 2000s. And the rest is basically history from there, really. Yeah.
What a story. And it's always incredible with most of the people we speak with. It's, their parents or generations before them had to make some sort of sacrifice for their children to live the life that they would have loved them to live.
Mm.
And Ngano, you're currently the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer at Acts of Random Kindness Victoria. And, we've read a lot about your work and what you're doing in your community. Could you tell
Mm.
us more about it and what motivated you to start?
Right. Like I said, I'm from a family where discipline is a big thing, and discipline, kindness is a big thing. And like you said, we're from most people who I'm sure will come to the show, they always refer back to their background and their origin and so on. And I think for me, that's a big part. I'm very grounded, although I came to Australia very young, I'm very grounded in my culture. And there's a term that we have in Africa that most Africans use, which is Ubuntu, which is this concept of togetherness. We can achieve all things, and many out of those kind of terms, many things come out, and kindness is one of them. Respect is one of them, and I think really motivated by those kind of key attributes of life. So, Act of Random Kindness was born very organically, to say the least, in that it was never really my intention to initiate an organization. So how it sort of came about was in 2012. Mind you, I was very young at that time as well. And I was doing a lot of sports at a semi-pro level. I was playing tennis semi-pro, soccer semi-pro. I was doing athletics semi-pro. So it was just my whole life was surrounded through sports. So sports and academics are the two things that I take very seriously. And of course, marrying all of that is maintaining my family and making sure that I'm contributing as much as I can to them as well. Now, why I say this is because in 2012, in the summer of 2012, I was in a local park in my area, local area. And as I was practicing for football, suddenly there was just a bunch of boys who were in a park adjacent to where I was training. And they saw me going at it, doing different drills, kicking the ball around. It was about six of them. I think from memory, I remember about six of them. A couple of boys from India and others from either Indonesia or Malaysia at that time. So they were primary school age, about either between 10 and 12. They came to where I was set up and they started mimicking what I was doing, moving around, doing the same movements as I was. And I looked at them because I was training very at a high intensity because there's a, as a someone who was thriving to do sport at a professional level, there's a certain intensity you have to train at. Nonetheless, they bugged me to say the least at that time because I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing. But it literally took a moment of recognition and a moment of kindness to realize, wait, if all six of them are here, I'm sure the intention is not to bother me. The intention must be there's a need and the need is not being met in the community. If I show these boys love and I show them kindness, hopefully that can build some sort of character in myself first, all right, and then build a character in them as well to I suppose realize that just because we're different, just because we got all these things going on, it does not mean we can't stop and actually acknowledge something. And also, if we can serve, to serve. So anyway, I took the station that I'd set up, I split it into two. One side of the park I set for them, and the other side of the park I set for myself. All right. And I told them, okay, you guys just look at what I'm doing and then do what I do. I sort of kind of gave them verbal instructions on what to do and so on. So I took half of my balls that I had, about maybe a dozen ball. So I kept six and I gave them six. And then I split the cones as well. And that's sort of how it all kind of started. And these boys were very clever. And this is what I mean. It only took a moment of realization to actually pinpoint that these boys were not here to bother me. They were here because they needed something like this and it was not being presented in the community. Yeah. So they quickly worked out a pattern that I was there every Wednesday and Saturday. And so every Wednesday, Saturday, after school from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., those boys came. And before long, after about maybe 2, 3 weeks of just letting them do that very, kind of coming together and working with that kind of structure where we split things together, they started to tell their friends. And because it was school holidays, the summer of 2012, school holidays, they went and told their friends that this guy is running programs for us and so on and so on. And before you knew, before I knew it, there was about maybe 30 and then 70 and then 100 and plus children at the Oval, all because there's this guy who's giving them free programs. And then the parents got involved. It was back and forth, back. And I was like, no, no, guys, I'm not giving you guys any programs. It's not my intention to give you guys anything. All right. But that's basically how ARC was born. Literally, one act of random kindness kind of gave birth to, I suppose, an organization or initially a program, then an organization and so on. and the council got involved. Actually, when the council first got involved, it wasn't all positive. It was quite negative actually, because I was doing things very organically. I had no structure, no discipline of how things work in terms of operation. I sort of just did it because there was an oval. There were children who wanted to do some activities. I had the equipment to some extent. Just give it to them, and if I can coach them and make them run around, I've done my job. Really, again, never intended, but that's sort of how it all kind of came together. Council got involved initially because they went, how come you're running events at a government, a local council area without booking the OVO, without having public liability or H&S? I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I don't even know what any of these terms mean. Yeah. Anyway, so that's sort of where it all started. And before long, ARC was born as an organization, like, formally in 2019. So we ran as a program for, yeah, almost 5 years before we became properly incorporated.
Well, sport is it's such a huge unifier. We've seen in history from South Africa to, anywhere in the world where
Mm,
sport just brings people together.
mm,
It's like a shared language, isn't it? I
mm,
absolutely
mm,
love that. And, speaking of which, with everything you've just said, football is definitely a huge part of your life. And you're currently the youth and community engagement and liaison officer at Football Empowerment, a
mm.
nonprofit organization that uses football as a tool for social inclusion and empowerment. Football, though, in itself is not particularly popular in Australia, I would think. How have you navigated getting the sport to where it is now in your community?
One word, need. All right. It's all about need. Right. Just because something is not popular, it might not necessarily mean there's no need for it. I don't operate on the basis of just because majority is doing it, then I need to do, or if the majority is not doing it, then don't do. It's more, what does this community actually need? And football was a need in that community. And football empowerment, by the way, I'm currently not active with at the moment because I've moved on to other things as well in career wise. But yes, I was with football empowerment for a very long time. A beautiful platform for engaging the youth and young adult, and I still show my love and support, and I try to get as many people going there as possible as well, and all the other groups that work around football empowerment as well. But to answer the question, yes, need for sure. I think in our community, engagement is one of the hardest things because everything that you can participate in costs an arm and a leg. You basically have to sell your liver in order for you to participate. And someone like me, who's from a family of 10, it's impossible for my parents to then go, well, Joe, you play football, then my brother also wants to play football, my sister wants to play football, run, tennis, all this. Each one of them begin tennis, and maybe running is not as expensive as football. Football, here to play football on average, it's about $1,000 a year. Now, 10 people, that's $10,000 maybe, and most of the migrant families, most of the Southeast or the cult community, just especially in the region where we're living, money is not something that we can actually invest in these kind of things because they are the last things on a priority list, right? So we've come in and kind of gone, you know what? Why should you miss out just because you don't have the means to get what you want? Then we said, let's create platforms whereby we can actually facilitate these young people and get them engaged. And again, this is something that we began to realize, particularly at ARC, when we began to mature and we began to understand how systems actually work and how programs work, how organizations work, and so on. And then essentially, it came to exactly that. We do surveys. What do you guys want to do in the community? Soccer. Okay. What do you guys want to do school holiday? Soccer. I'm like, okay, no worries. You know what? Let's just create soccer-based programs. And then it worked really well because everything else that stems, because it doesn't only look after football sports, we do all other things as well, and so does football empowerment and all the other organizations around our local area as well. But we now use them as capture points, right? Like a base where we get all these young people together, and then we stem them into the different other, I suppose, programs or initiatives that we have in the community. For example, leadership programs, tuition programs, cooking programs, and first aid, whatever, swimming programs. All of them stem from having this ball where they all want to be there first, and then we kind of just promote all the other things as well. And I think it's worked really, really well to date. But again, of course, football is not a huge thing in Australia because it's sports that come before it, but it's growing. And I think part of the reason why it's growing as well is because of these communities that are showing much love and attention towards it. Mm. Mm. No, not at all. That's right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. I suppose, first and foremost, when it comes to award, and I always say this, we don't do the work we do for awards. Awards, I suppose, recognition of the effort we're putting, I suppose, to try and make change, social change or social impact. And when it comes to awards as well, they're recognized in different ways. Sometimes I have no idea what's happening. I just get an email or get a phone call, and then I'm like, oh, yes, yes, that's me. Oh, that's us. You've been nominated for this. Can you attend? Yes. And then whatever happens after that, it happens. I've never sat down and gone, you know what, let's apply for this award because it's not my motivation and it's not ARC's motivation. And we don't want to be tied to that realm of things where, but I suppose awards have an advantage in that they can get you recognition. And then through that, you can then promote the work a little bit more. I suppose in that way, it's very good. But in terms of what exactly has sort of brought those awards on to us has been exactly that social impact, and we do it without bias. We're not targeting specific people, age. No, we're quite open in most of our activities, unless we specify them just for to increase the amount of people, I suppose, getting things at an equal level. For example, women in our community, they don't get the exact same platform as males do. So we might do our women specific program or project, and ARC was sort of born on that concept as well, children and women. So a lot of our programs are children and women, but at the same time, we also do other programs that incorporate everyone else as well. And we're very honest with how we work. If we say we're going to offer you guys something, we offer it, and we try to deliver it to deliver the program with quality. For us, that's very important as well. And I suppose in that way, that's what people have recognized and people have appreciated. And surveys say the exact same thing. And through that, I suppose that's how the recognitions have sort of come about. Yes. Right. Correct. Yes, it's very, very, very interesting. It was a long time ago, but at the same time, it's quite. Some of the memories are quite vivid, which sort of shows, some things just don't fade away quite quickly because they leave such an impact on you, whether negative or positive. Now, being one of eight, first and foremost, is not easy because it means, everything has to be shared 8 times, which is okay. Personally, actually, we're very good in our household. We're very, very good in that. We've been taught from a very young age that, again, the concept of Ubuntu, which is togetherness, you can achieve all things, right? Together, you can achieve all things. And when we share quite well, and mother and father do very well to distribute the love quite equally as well. Like I said before, I've always been the very privileged one, I say, in my household, only because opportunities seem to kind of chase me and I seem to chase them. So we kind of meet halfway. And so I'm always placed in a position where then I can then look back and say, oh, I have a brother and a sister. Can we they also come along as well? We kind of do that kind, and all of them are the same as well, wherever they go. Because I have a sister who's doing law. My older sister is a senior nurse. Then I have one in media, another one doing biomed as well, and so on. So it's quite diverse in what we do. But wherever we go, we try to share that love as well. And but again, it doesn't make it easy because again, it means there's a lot of things that we need to work out as well. Being so many of us in a family, it's never easy in that sense. And in terms of when we first came to Australia, I remember the early stages of Australia because early 2000 was a mess in Australia, really, for immigrants coming in. As a young person, first and foremost, we came to Australia with no English language, which was already a big problem because if you can't speak like the natives or you stand out like Wally, or well, Wally is quite hidden, but you stand out like something that's so open. You know what I mean? And we just stood out. And when you stand out, so if somebody wants to pick on you, they pick on you quite comfortably, and you can't really do much about it. And when you do, you become the bad person because you're the new one in the system. And so since you're new in the system, expectation is you obey and assimilate as quickly as possible. But I just wish people could walk in our shoes. We're the one who've had to leave the country we love. We're the ones who've had to change a whole culture to try and make things work. But sometimes, when because I did a workshop a couple of days ago talking about this very concept of now you have a dual nation in you, and one nation demands one thing and the other nation demands one thing. For example, at home, a million things really, and then in school, a million things. When I come home, there's a host of confusion. Mom will tell me one thing, attaching it with our roots. Then the teachers or schools or friends will tell you another thing, attaching it with the Australian culture. And so you're always being kind of pulled back and forth. And it's very tough. It's very, very tough. And at that time, people would take advantage of that. If you try to remain strong in your roots, for example, at school, and, they pinpoint things that are, very African, for example, and say, that's not us. We don't do that. Go back to where you come from. I'm sure people hear all these things. And I don't like talking about these kind of things, but the reality is it happens. It needs to be addressed over and over and over again because it's been happening for ages. But that's just the reality of it. You look different, you sound different, people will pinpoint it. And that's us growing up, really. I don't think it matters, to be honest. I think as long as it's impact and you're contributing to the fabric of society, why should it matter what other people say, what other people think? Like, we have a role to play, which is to add value not only to our own lives, but to the lives of other people as well. And I can proudly say ARC is doing that. And the organizations that I work with all doing that. I mean, you girls, what you guys are doing right now is adding value to society, it's adding value to, to people, and you're changing people's lives through them telling their stories. And ARC does the exact same thing, giving opportunities, making sure that people are cared for, loved properly. Like, so if somebody comes in externally and tells me, you look different, you sound different, go back to where you come from, I'm like, go back to where? This is my land. This is where I've built my whole life. This is where I'm going back to. And so that's my attitude, really. It doesn't matter. And I think if everyone sort of understood that concept a little bit better, maybe we could go past beyond, the people who show prejudice or stigma or racism. Like, I really, honestly speaking, I ignore it to an extent where I would make somebody very upset that I'm not paying attention to what they're saying, especially if it does not add value to me or the people around me. That's just my method. It might not work for everyone, but that's my method. And that's why I keep going forward. There's one very wise man who said, when a steam train or a train is going full stream ahead, it does not matter how much dogs bark, that train will continue to go. All right. The barking of the dogs will not cause the train to stop. See? And I really think there's a lot of wisdom in that. If we stopped and paid attention to the barking of the dogs, maybe they might convince us we're not good enough. And I don't think that's true. We're too good. There's value, there's purpose, and there's too many things, there's too many opportunities for us to sit back and entertain these kind of things. And I don't have time for it, personally speaking. Why would someone leave the comfort of the space or the comfort of the day to come and say something to someone else? They're going through something. Now, of course, you should not use your problems and try to make someone else feel as bad as you. I think that's just wrong. But in the scheme of things, that's just reality. That's just what happens. And again, I take it upon myself to recognize this thing and just go, I don't care. I'm going to nullify it. It doesn't exist. And why should I change my day just because someone is having a bad day? Should I join them? I don't think I'm going to do that. And that's just the mindset and attitude, really.
We have ended on such an empowered note that in itself that was brilliant and really good encouragement. You're trained full steam ahead. Enjoy the barking dogs. I
Yeah.
love that analogy. I've not heard that before. I absolutely love that analogy. Well, Engano, thank you so much for being a part of Empowered Voices Amplified. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. I am on all media platforms at the moment. All the major ones. Facebook, Jonasi Singabuye, and also Instagram, Jojo Magic or Jonasi Singabuye. You find me there through as well. I'm more active though on LinkedIn. Full name as displayed here as well, Singabuye. You'll be able to find me there as well. Feel free to connect with me through email as well. Feel free to share that later on as well. And if there's anyone ever who wants to get in contact, definitely do so. There's a lot of wonderful work that we have planned for this year, wonderful groups coming up as well. And I definitely want to share those opportunities and those findings with people as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks again, Engano. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the latest episode of Empowered Voices Amplified. We hope you find this as empowering as we did. If you have any questions, comments, or contributions, feel free to send us a note. Until next time, stay empowered.